what if the most stunning part of your garden came from something you almost threw away? In today's video, we're turning forgotten trash into unforgettable garden art. This isn't just recycling. It's a reimagination of beauty right in your own front yard or backyard. Welcome to Revive Nature, where we believe that creativity grows best when it's rooted in purpose. This video includes helpful timestamps, so feel free to jump to the part that inspires you most. And if you have any questions or ideas, let's talk in the comments. If this resonates with you, go beyond watching, create. Use what you already have. And most importantly, bring it to life with heart. In the quietest corners of a cottage garden, magic often lives in the smallest details. Here, where fences are not just boundaries but invitations to wonder, old twisted roots find a new calling, as sculpted fairy gates between garden posts. These natural remnants, once discarded and forgotten beneath the forest floor, are reborn with new purpose along a garden's edge. Each gnarled curve, each winding twist of wood is carefully chosen, not carved, but revealed. Nature already shaped them with time and weather, and now, in skilled hands, they become archways for imagination. Their shapes are mounted along low picket fences, forming tiny doorways that children imagine fairies walking through, or hidden forest creatures resting behind. Some are left in their raw wooden tones, while others are softly painted, misty blues, faded whites, mossy greens, to blend with the dreamy palette of fall. The surroundings are no less poetic. Chrysanthemums stand tall like the guardians of autumn. Asters peek from behind the roots like secrets not yet told. Marigolds, with their sunbursts of gold and amber, add warmth to every step. Between the roots, small bells made from recycled metal pieces hang delicately, chiming when the wind tells a story. This isn't just decoration. It's a dialogue between earth and creativity. The roots, once buried and unseen, now frame the garden with stories of resilience and reuse. They draw the eye not because they shout for attention, but because they whisper something charming and strange, something only a truly enchanted garden can say. Placed in the right corner of a tiny front yard or even bordering a narrow backyard fence, these root-sculpted accents become more than a DIY idea. They become part of the garden's soul, a piece of upcycled poetry where nature, design, and whimsy collide. And for anyone passing by, they offer a pause, a smile, and perhaps even the idea to create something just as quietly beautiful from their own forgotten scraps of the earth. In a world where space is a luxury, a tiny backyard becomes a stage for the imagination. And where there is no water to flow, painted stones create the illusion of rivers. This is not just garden edging, it's the poetry of movement, stilled into color and form. The dry stream begins at the foot of the garden, where carefully chosen stones, smooth, oval, and cold to the touch, are painted by hand in gradients of turquoise, deep navy, warm white, and sunset coral. Assembled in a flowing shape, the stones shimmer under sunlight like a river caught mid-dream. Around this man-made stream, autumn flowers rise in contrast and harmony. The sturdy chrysanthemums form a soft wall of color, amber, lavender, and pink, hugging the stream's path. Sedum autumn joy brings its muted rose hues, while Japanese anemones dance in the breeze, their pale petals reflecting off the painted rocks. It's a scene that feels both carefully designed and delightfully accidental, like a memory of water held in stone. Tiny bridges made of reclaimed wood or metal scraps cross the stream at intervals, allowing the eye to wander naturally through the landscape. There are no hard lines here, only curves and colors, inviting movement, exploration, peace. Birds perch on nearby branches, butterflies visit the blooms, and in the stillness of early morning or dusk, it all feels deeply alive. This dry river isn't just art, it's a clever reinvention of trash and treasure. It requires no plumbing, no pumps, no digging. Only creativity, leftover paint, and a handful of discarded rocks. Yet the impact is lasting. It draws attention, invites conversation, and brings a fresh narrative to even the smallest of gardens. In backyards where grass won't grow or space is too narrow for borders, this DIY idea becomes a signature, a winding tribute to nature, design, and resourcefulness. And in every season, especially fall, the painted rock stream holds its place quietly, elegantly, beautifully. Nestled beneath the open arms of a quiet pergola, a mosaic tells its story, not with words, but with fragments. Each stone, each shard, each salvaged tile becomes a syllable in the poem of a garden, winding gently underfoot like memory made solid. This pergola does not shout. It welcomes. Its posts are softened by climbing vines and fading ivy, but the true charm lies beneath it, a hand-laid mosaic pathway, born of discarded beauty. Broken tiles, smooth stones, and forgotten ceramic pieces, once useless, now essential, are fitted together in a flow of texture and color. Soft grays, rustic reds, deep greens, and the occasional glint of mirror invite the eyes to linger, to follow. The pathway curves lightly under the pergola's shade, inviting footsteps toward a bench of old timber, worn smooth with time. Surrounding this sacred corner of the garden, fall flowers rise like a living frame, asters in lavender bursts, chrysanthemums in golden wine, and sedum autumn joy blooming with quiet confidence. This isn't a garden for grand entrances. It's a space for slow moments, quiet conversations, the turning of pages or the closing of eyes. It transforms leftover bits of stone and junk into a tranquil canvas, one that honors imperfection and the art of assembly. And yet, it's also deeply practical. The pathway holds steady through rain and frost, guiding the way across wet soil and autumn leaves. It resists time not just through strength, but through spirit, because it was made with intention, not consumption. In small yards where every square foot matters, this DIY stone mosaic becomes more than decoration. It becomes a destination. A place where craftsmanship meets calm, where the scattered leftovers of construction and life are pieced back together with meaning. So when visitors pass under the pergola, they do not just walk, they experience. And when light filters through the vines above, casting shifting shadows over the mosaic below, it becomes clear, this path leads not just across the garden, but into the heart of it. When the sun begins to dip and shadows stretch gently across the garden, something magical begins to rise. Floating lanterns, seemingly untethered to earth, hovering among the blossoms like small moons anchored by nothing but air and imagination. But look closer. They are not made of glass, nor paper. These lanterns are born from stone, humble rocks, gathered from old corners, repurposed and repainted, stacked with care and precision. Each one is perched atop a slender bamboo stake, its balance so delicate that it seems to float in place. Between the layers, a tiny capsule, perhaps from an old solar light or a salvaged LED, glows softly as twilight deepens. It's a surreal kind of beauty. Among the marigolds, the Japanese anemones, the fluttering petals of asters, these rocky spheres shine gently, casting long shadows on the pathways and whispering of warmth. There is no electricity strung across the space, no heavy construction, just a few gathered materials, a steady hand, and a vision for something softly bold. The bamboo stakes sway slightly with the breeze, and the stones atop them seem to nod. They are not loud. They do not flash. Instead, they illuminate the garden with quiet confidence, reminding us that light, like art, can come from the simplest of sources. By day, they are sculptures, painted in pale greens, dusty pinks, cool blues, coordinated to echo the garden's flowers. By night, they become lanterns, marking corners, borders, and favorite spots like stars brought down to earth. The combination of rooted plants and rising stones creates a vertical rhythm, a dance between grounded nature and ascending light. These floating rock lanterns are ideal for small gardens where space is precious and magic is needed. Whether placed around a tiny patio or lined along a narrow path, they add a sense of story, an invitation to linger a little longer, to let the garden keep glowing even after the last light fades. In quiet corners of the garden, where the sun only grazes and the air hums with stillness, something ancient finds new form, miniature totems made from tree roots, rising from the earth like relics of forgotten tales. Each totem begins as a discarded root, pulled from earth after seasons of growth and decay. Gnarled and split, twisted by time, they seem chaotic at first glance. But in the hands of a patient gardener artist, they are transformed. Cleaned, sanded, and carefully arranged, they become vertical art, totems that whisper of resilience and raw beauty. Some are left bare, their natural grains exposed like fingerprints of the forest. Others are painted just enough, soft ochres, coastal blues, muted greens, blending into the garden's living palette. Stacked atop one another or rising alone, they catch the light differently at every hour of the day. In morning mist, they seem mysterious. In evening gold, they glow. Placed thoughtfully into corners, often the most overlooked parts of a garden, these mini root totems become points of interest, drawing the eye where it might never have wandered. They work beautifully in small spaces where traditional sculptures might overwhelm. Instead of dominating, they invite curiosity. What story does each knot tell? What bird might perch there next? Around their bases, the garden responds in full bloom. A halo of chrysanthemums adds autumn's bold colors. Marigolds spill bright cheer nearby. Japanese anemones soften the edges with their fluttering grace. Even the creeping ivy seems to bow gently at the root's feet. There is no noise in these sculptures, no electric shine. Only the quiet poetry of wood, aged and honored. They do not pretend to be perfect, they celebrate imperfection. And in doing so, they mirror the spirit of the cottage garden itself, lush, layered, welcoming, and wild in just the right ways. These root totems aren't just decoration. They are declarations that even in small gardens, there is room for wonder. That even trash, when seen with fresh eyes, can become a keeper of stories. And that even a single root, shaped by time and placed with care, can stand tall and proud once more. In the heart of a cozy backyard stands a humble gazebo, not grand, not ornate, but made unforgettable by a single choice, a curtain of pebbles, painted by hand and hung with intention. In place of fabric or screen, this backdrop is crafted from time-worn stones, gathered from walks and waste piles, each one given a second life in midair. Threaded with transparent lines, the pebbles float like beads of earth and memory. Each stone is a brushstroke in a windswayed painting, coral pink, moss green, sky blue, and gentle beige, tones that echo the flowers blooming below. Chrysanthemums nod in approval, their golden heads leaning toward the curtain. Marigolds sparkle nearby, and sedum autumn joy adds depth with its dusky rose hues. When wind passes through the garden, the curtain dances. Light flickers between gaps, casting dappled shadows that shift with the hour. Birds pause on nearby posts. Butterflies rest along the strings. In this space, time slows, not in stillness, but in rhythm. The sound of stones gently tapping is meditative, almost like water trickling across a forgotten stream. And though delicate in appearance, the curtain is strong, proof that even discarded bits of gravel and garden trash can become elegant when reimagined with care. No part of this project shouts, "expensive." There is no crystal, no silk, no exotic wood. Just pebbles, thread, paint, and the courage to create. This idea sings especially in tiny spaces, where every inch must earn its beauty. The pebble curtain adds vertical art without overwhelming. It frames the gazebo in softness and movement, creating a hidden nook perfect for morning tea, quiet reading, or slow sunset watching. And because it's made from the forgotten, the chipped, the rough, the left behind, it brings a different kind of value. Not of price, but of perspective. In this curtain, we see what happens when the overlooked becomes the centerpiece. When trash becomes treasure. When nature and design hold hands. So let the pebbles hang and dance. Let the wind play through them. And let anyone who walks into this little garden corner pause long enough to wonder, what else, lying forgotten in a box or a path, might be waiting to become beautiful. In the smallest corners of a garden, something bold can rise, quietly, organically, without steel or brick. From earth to sky, old tree roots, twisted and weathered, are stacked one by one into vertical columns. Not carved. Not forced. Just placed with care and vision, forming totems that feel as if they grew there by their own will. Each root is different. One curves like a question. Another splits like lightning frozen in time. Together, they form a pillar of raw nature, rough but intentional, aged but alive. Atop these stacked roots, planters overflow with trailing vines, their green tendrils tumbling downward, softening every line. Ivy slips between cracks. Sweet potato vines spill over edges. In time, the roots and vines become indistinguishable, embracing one another as if they've always belonged. Around the base, the soil bursts with life. Chrysanthemums bloom with the defiance of late autumn. Sedum autumn joy clusters in soft mauve mounds. Japanese anemones nod politely in the breeze. The whole scene feels untouched by time, yet clearly shaped by hands that love the wild. These root columns don't just decorate, they divide and define. In tiny patios or narrow garden paths, they break the horizontal monotony and pull the eye upward. They become landmarks, something to walk toward, to sit beside, to wrap lights around when the sun goes down. And like all good garden stories, they begin with waste. Roots that once tripped over feet in the yard. Chunks of driftwood tossed aside. Trash in the eyes of most. But in this garden, they're assembled like sculpture, given color with chalk paint or washed with lime, then left to weather with dignity. There is something deeply human about them, about reclaiming the broken, stacking it higher, letting beauty grow from its cracks. The vines don't mind the imperfections. They only seek something to hold. And so, in these tiny yards and shaded patios, the columns stand, not towering, not proud, but rooted. They offer a place for nature to climb and rest. They whisper stories of what was and what can be. And in every glance, they remind us that vertical space, like forgotten roots, holds endless potential. In the golden hush of autumn, there's something deeply satisfying about a front yard that feels both neat and natural, where the wildness of blooming flowers meets the order of a clean, hand-built border. That's where river rocks come in, not just as stones, but as quiet anchors of the garden's edge. Collected from stream beds, construction piles, or leftover landscaping bins, these smooth rocks, rounded by time, carry with them a history of movement. Now, they find a new purpose, lining the beds of chrysanthemums, guiding the eye along a gentle curve, and grounding the garden in simplicity. Each rock is different. Some as small as a palm, others large enough to mark a corner. Their colors range from dusty gray to soft beige, sometimes speckled, sometimes deep and dark. Some are left in their natural tones, others painted in soft hues, sun-faded yellow, sage green, blush pink, to echo the flowers they border. Behind this humble wall, chrysanthemums rise like flames, golden, copper, ruby, white. They bloom in clusters, their petals full and heavy, nodding with the wind. Sedum autumn joy supports the border with its sculptural mounds, and a few asters peek through with cheerful defiance. This edging doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It frames the garden bed like a quiet breath between thoughts, keeping the soil in place and the design grounded. And because it's made from discarded or leftover materials, it carries a deeper charm, one of resourcefulness and respect for the materials others might overlook. It's also practical. River rocks hold heat through the night, helping roots stay warm. They prevent soil erosion in heavy rain, and unlike synthetic edging, they age gracefully. Over time, moss may gather. Leaves will fall. But the rocks remain, settled like old souls keeping watch. For a front yard where first impressions matter, this simple DIY project makes a statement without ever needing to explain itself. It's thrifted elegance, natural structure, and most of all, it's a reminder that beauty isn't always about what's added, it's about how the right things are arranged. And so, the rocks rest. They edge, they shape, and they quietly complete the garden, one line of intention at a time. Far from the coast but full of its spirit, a tiny garden can still carry the soul of the sea. In this tucked-away corner of the backyard or front path, root-wrapped planters rise like treasures washed ashore, raw, weathered, elegant in their imperfection. The planters begin as simple vessels, leftover pots, worn-out buckets, even dented containers pulled from trash piles. But they are given new life with the careful winding of old tree roots, collected, dried, and chosen for their shape. The roots twist and curl around each planter like drifting seaweed, embracing it in a natural armor that feels sculptural and organic. Some roots are left rough and gray, others lightly whitewashed or painted with pale aqua, seafoam green, or soft coral, tones that mirror the ocean but blend gently with the garden. The result is something part rustic, part coastal, fully enchanting. Inside, the planters burst with life. Blue-toned asters and chrysanthemums in crisp whites and purples mimic the spray of surf against stone. Sedum autumn joy adds structure with its fleshy texture, like coral beneath a tidal. Trailing vines spill downward like strands of kelp, connecting the planter to the earth again. Around each piece, crushed shells or white pebbles are scattered like beach gravel. Perhaps a miniature driftwood anchor leans beside one, or a painted stone shaped like a fish peeks from beneath the leaves. These little details turn the garden into a story, a place where land meets sea, where the natural meets the repurposed. But it's not just about theme. These root-wrapped planters are practical, too. The roots act as insulation, protecting plant roots from sudden temperature changes. They also reinforce the structure of fragile or aging pots. And, above all, they make trash feel precious, turning throwaways into conversation pieces. In a garden where space is limited but imagination runs wide, this seascape idea offers a new current of creativity. It invites the breeze. It frames the flowers. It reclaims and reimagines. And as guests wander by, Many will pause, tilt their heads, and ask, "Where did you get that planter?" And with a smile, you'll answer, "I made it, from roots and dreams of the sea." There is a quiet rebellion happening along the fence. Not loud, not messy, just bold enough to turn heads and soft enough to feel like it belongs. Here, between the wooden slats of a small garden fence, junk meets stone, and becomes art. The idea is simple but powerful. Take what is broken, bent, or forgotten, and give it place. A rusted wrench, a misfit gear, a bolt with no home, all are cleaned, repainted, and arranged beside smooth, weathered stones. Together, they form patterns that surprise the eye, spirals that echo the shells of the earth, ladders that climb toward blooming vines, abstract shapes that catch light and shadow differently at each hour of the day. The stones, some natural, some painted, anchor the pieces in earthiness. They contrast the cold curves of metal with the warmth of the organic. Some are left bare in soft grays and taupes, others are painted in colors pulled from the flowers that bloom nearby, deep plum to match the asters, golden ochre to echo the marigolds, rose pink like the chrysanthemums just beneath. Mounted vertically or inside recycled frames, these sculptures don't clutter, they elevate. They turn blank fence panels into curated canvases, each with a rhythm, a pulse. They invite visitors to pause and trace the lines, to find the story in each weld and each stone. The garden beneath thrives. Japanese anemones lean upward toward the light-catching curves. Sedum clusters like soft cushions near the base. Bees drift lazily between the blossoms and the metal edges, unaware of the contrast they buzz through. This isn't a gallery. It's a garden. But here, art is grown from rust and rubble, crafted not for prestige but for presence. And perhaps that's what makes it so magnetic. It's the kind of beauty that doesn't ask for attention, but earns it. And for the gardener, it's a quiet joy, to stand before a fence once plain, now singing in iron and stone, and know it was made from nothing more than what others would throw away. That is design. That is defiance. That is the garden speaking back.